Welcome back to Just the Facts, where the brilliant minds meet. Now, during the break, we're in the middle of a very heated discussion where we're comparing and contrasting some of the allocations from last year and this year and some of the inconsistencies that arise. Now, this year's budget focused on 6 thematic areas. There was security, there was infrastructure, there was agriculture and innovations, we had education, we had health, and strengthening devolution. Now, looking at security, let's look at the numbers. We have 25 billion that's being allocated to something called the Security Modernization Program. Then we have 112.5 billion for military security. Then we have 102.4 billion for internal security. These are very, very large allocations compared and contrasted with what we had in last year's budget. So is that to say that the situation changed within the years, or did they realize that maybe more money was needed? And even if more money was needed, or they required a huger allocation to the security docket, I mean, what difference is it going to make? The year before last, we saw, compared with last year's financial budget allocation, was much, much higher. And now it's gone extremely, extremely high. First and foremost, what does that say about, one, the state at which our government is taking this security situation? Is it that they've realized now that it's a problem? Or is it that they were in denial? Let's start with Mheshimiwa, then we'll go to Professor.
First of all, I think the reaction from the government in terms of handling security has not surprised me. The Jubilee administration is always in panic, always firefighting. Forget about even the budgetary allocation that you have witnessed. You remember immediately after the Garissa attack, the reaction of the head of state was to order for 10,000 recruits who were illegally recruited to go for training. The perception is that we didn't have enough police officers, which is completely not the fact. And even right now, I think the attention is shifting in the government thinking. They believe that if they put more resources to security, then we will have better security. Far from it. Even last year, we had an increased budget for security compared to the previous year, but you saw more insecurity in the year than it was previously. And therefore, the answer and the solution to insecurity, the government should realize by now, is not purely on resources. Resources is necessary. We need to give more money to security, both the hardware and the software. We need to address the morale, as Professor did say, of our police force. But at the same time, we need to work on the harmony. We need to bring some kind of coordination among the various security organs. We have the administration police, we have the Kenya police, we have the reservists, we have so many various types of security organs. Even the defense has been involved in the in the internal security or the homeland security, so to speak, in the past few occasions. So we need harmony, we need morale boosting, we need the equipment, we need the intelligence gathering. All this we need, but above all, we need to change the mindset of our security system so that we have a security system that is conscious of the security. But finally, we need to attack the biggest enemy to security in this country, and that is corruption. I think we don't speak much about it. A lot of the infiltration that we see, a lot of the terrorist activities that we see in this country, the attacks are as a direct consequence of the corrupt elements within our midst who allow these people to come into our country and cause mayhem. It may not be linked to the resources that we allocate to the security docket. That's very true. Prof, what do you have to say?
I would agree with Mheshimiwa that corruption is a very big disease and it is eroding everything that we do. There's no doubt about that. But we need to do more than that. Try to figure out, to get into the minds of those people who are doing these things, the terrorists themselves. And for one, the terrorists are not idiots. That's why they keep on beating you, because they are 2-3 steps ahead. So how do they do it? So it's a mindset thing, as Mheshimiwa is saying. And if it's a mindset, then we need to recast the way we do things, such that we are not being caught off guard all the time. And I would not say that it is our security people who are not doing their job. Sometimes it's the approach that has been an issue. Sometimes if you are concentrating on pickpockets, okay, the people who are doing these things are not even worried about those things. They're somewhere else. Some of them are plotting these things in Nairobi. Some are maybe in London. Some are in Washington.
That's true.
So how do we get to these people who are plotting these things? Because this issue is not just a Kenyan thing.
It's a global issue.
It's a global issue. It's
That's
also a
true.
regional issue. There is no question about it. If they are having problems in Somalia, we get affected. When they have problems in Ethiopia or South Sudan or Uganda, we get affected. So it is in our interest to get into those places and see what's going on there. And then how is it likely to affect us here? And so we get ready to deal with it rather than wait for the things to happen.
Thank you so much, Prof. I want to ask something to you specifically. We've seen very many, we've seen the tax implications that have come with the budget. We had, first and foremost, we had beneficiaries of tax exemption, you know. For instance, it's now much easier, I think it's tax-free to import film equipment. You know, employers who employ youth for about, I think, is it 12 months? 16 to 12 months or so.
6 to 12.
6 to 12 months actually will be given some rebate from tax. But at the same time, we've seen and we've had proposals to the regard of, you know, increase in excise duty of harmful products, you know, and aluminium, was it aluminium products, you know, alcohol, cigarettes, cars, we've seen that go up. Now, what are the implications of all of this, especially in regard of the state of the Kenyan shilling right now at the foreign exchange, you know? We know that the shilling is weakening as a result of, I think, maybe the strengthening of the American economy. But we've seen some beneficiaries. We have some people who are now exempt of, you know, excise duty. You know, you'll be able to bring in some particular goods duty free, but at the same time we'll now have the smokers and the alcoholics bear the bigger burden of the, you know, the bigger tax burden. So just give us the implications in regard to the weakening shilling.
Kamada, before I get to answering that question, allow me to lend my voice to the question that you asked Mheshimiwa and Prof.
Definitely.
About security and how we are treating it in these budgets. And I wish to ask you and the Kenyans who are viewing, who were the people attacking us? They were the Kenyan youths. And why were they so susceptible to the approaches by the terrorist organizations? And I would say it was lack of opportunities. So I think what the government may be thinking of is what preventive measures can we take to avert a situation where our own youth come back to attack us. And how do you do that? By extending opportunities to them. And one of the things that the government has identified as the most viable is that of engaging these youth into constructive engagement in nation building through the National Youth Service Program.
Yes.
I wouldn't discount that. The issue at hand would be, what do we do post that, post the training?
Yeah.
And then I'm happy that the minister alluded something like, we will form enterprises, government enterprises that will be youth driven. So then the absorption of those recruits who would have gone through the training program is kind of assured. But we must see more in terms of opportunities to absorb the youthful part
Population.
of our population.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, to go to your second question on the
Tax implications vis-a-vis the weakening shilling?
the tax implications, and you have asked around beer and the reduction in duty, or the shifting of treatment from exempt or from standard rates of 16 to exempt.
Yeah.
And you need to ask, we need to look at what products were the focus of that treatment.
And we're looking at sorghum, wimbi, and cassava.
Yes.
And we need to ask ourselves, where are these things grown? These things are grown in the rural parts of Kenya. So by extension, by granting those rebates, by granting duty remissions, it was actually duty remissions on this, then you are kind of encouraging brewers to get into brewing alcohol
Locally. Okay.
and at the same time generate employment opportunity to the rural population, and hence extending an opportunity for them to earn a living. And that lends that lends credence to a thought that I had early today morning, where I said, for us to focus, the focus on agriculture is not as so strong in this budget, because I asked myself, beyond the input subsidies of 3 billion shillings, after the farmers produce, what next? We do not see mechanisms of taking the farm produce away from the farmers, doing some value addition, so then so that the farmers can fetch better prices for their produce. So if these, and I see these as a step in enhancing the value of locally produced agricultural products and to accrue better prices to our economy and to our farmers.
Mheshimiwa, I see you getting a bit bored. I want to ask you.
I'm not. I'm not.
I want to ask you, Fred over here has really, even to myself, I think deciphered what seemed like a very technical aspect of the budget, and which ideally is to encourage the use of locally produced raw materials and the likes. One of the biggest questions was, you've seen the budget in all its technicalities and all its numbers. I mean, you're an accountant, you know, CPA body. At the same time, you're a member of parliament. You're the chair of one of the biggest, actually the biggest political party in Kenya. So I know you are sensitized and you know what is happening at the grassroots. What I want to ask you, irrespective of your position, do you feel like this budget deals with the concerns for the common mwananchi? You know, the mamambogas and the boda riders and the kamenegoros. Does it actually take into account my immediate concerns with tomorrow?
First of all, I think if I recollect properly, the issue of encouraging the production of the millet and this sorghum, the locally produced crops that would be used in brewing alcohol. This is not the first time that we have spoken to it. What I can't remember properly is why we did not factor it in the last finance bill, because it was also in the pronouncements as it were today. But I wanted to say that the minister or the cabinet secretary, for that matter, spoke about film industry, sugar, and also the fishing nets. To me, the interest here was to encourage local production of these mentioned items by trying to exempt the raw material that would go into the production of the same. And then that would support the film industry to develop it, to create more jobs. The bottom line here is to create more jobs. To that extent, I think that is a good move. Even the sugar, to protect our sugar industry, which has been facing a lot of challenges from cheap imports. And also the fishing net, and coming from the fishing community, you'd expect that would really interest me. My concern rather was targeting this so-called sin tax and what we call leisure products like the cigarettes, the beer. I think we have reached the limit. I think as a country we now need to come to a point where we are saying enough is enough. We cannot continue punishing those who are drinking beer and cigarettes. And that, because you see, now we are targeting the sticks and the volume in terms of alcohol, I mean in terms of cigarette and alcohol respectively. And then saying that from there and a few more tax adjustments, we'd collect 25 billion shillings more. So, and that is the only, by the way, serious increase in revenue collection that is projected by government.
But
So
ideally, I think for those particular goods, it's if you think about it realistically, it's the quickest way to make this sort of revenue, this sort of tax revenue. These are goods with inelastic demand. Cigarette smokers, irrespective of the price, will always buy. Alcohol consumers, irrespective of the price, one way or the other, will always buy. But is it fair to have such incidents on that particular part of the
that's what I was
population?
saying. To me, it's reaching a point that we are looking a bit, let me call it also immoral. We are trying, because if you have legalized, if these products are not illegal, and then you are behaving with your tax regime as if they are illegal, I think then we lose it. But you asked me a question about the ordinary mwananchi. I think for ordinary mwananchi in this country to benefit from an economic, economic decisions like the one that we saw today, you need to increase food production. That is the number one. And Fred has spoken to, after producing, where do you take it? That is a valid point, because if you are only providing over 1 billion for strategic grain reserve and for buying maize from farmers, for that matter, then you are not helping agriculture much, because a lot of, we are going to have very good harvest in the near future.
Yes.
In a couple of weeks or in 1 month. And where will that maize go? You will start seeing maize farmers crying that they can't even sell their crops. And therefore you are discouraging agriculture. Two, the other thing that you need to also target is if there are social cash transfers, then you need to be very clear that we are making definite intervention to cushion the poor, and this is what we want to do. It's not just a question of throwing figures, giving 7 billion to the elderly, so much to the orphans and vulnerable. I think we need to be very clear, who are we targeting? If we are targeting the elderly, we need to know the number of the elderly in this country who cannot afford, and come with a serious intervention strategy to ensure that they are cushioned. Then you will be responsive, you will come out as responsive enough to the needs of the local mwananchi.
I like that. So, Professor, we have about 45 seconds before the end of the show. I just want you to tell us, I think from within your professional dispensation, with what you saw last year, with last year's financial budget and this year's, I mean, what can Kenyans expect? Realistically, do we have better things and more benefits to look forward to, or can I just expect, you know, a bigger hole in my pocket?
I think the presentation was upbeat, very positive, and there was that impression that you are targeting, uplifting the people on the down, rather than the ones on the up. The one group of people that's going to be hit a little hard were those people who are borrowed from the banks, because the interest rate is going to go up. That one, I mean, anyone who has borrowed money from the bank, you know the way they behave sometimes. So that. But in general, I think it was a very upbeat presentation. If the implementation goes with the presentation, then things are going to be very rosy. But if there is a big discrepancy between the projection and the actuality, then we have a small problem along the way. But generally, it's a very positive approach. I'm optimistic about it. Because if all the roads are built, and in fact, when you have all this infrastructure, that's income, because it reduces your transport cost, and the time you spend doing other things, so you can spend that generating income in other ways. So looked at in that big way, whereas you may not have money in your pocket because of these things, you do have money that you did not spend in those other things. That's an income. And so there is a positive thing in that in that respect. So don't expect a big hole in your pocket.
Thank you all so much. And that wraps it up for Just the Facts on Ebru Africa TV. And I think it was a very insightful show. And we had Mr. Riaga here give us taxpayers, I think, a silver lining to what seems to be a very dark cloud. And that, you know, maybe if these debts are being put into investment opportunities and development agendas, maybe it won't burn our pockets too much. I suppose all we have to look forward to is the future. We had Mheshimiwa Mbadi, on the other hand, say that we need a structured approach. Let's come up with roadmaps and guidelines and a strategy before we just throw our money all over the place. And of course, our final thought of the night was from Professor Macharia Munene, who said, if the implementation matches the presentation, then we have nothing but rosy days ahead of us. As for me, I'm a Kenyan taxpayer just hoping for the very best. It was absolutely lovely having you here with us tonight on Just the Facts. From myself, my 3 absolutely amazing guests, and the entire Ebru Africa family, wishing you an absolutely lovely, blessed Thursday night.